Hey, my name is Mo Chen and I work as a data and analytics analyst within the financial services industry. In today's video, I'll walk you through an end-to-end Excel project where we'll gather the data first, transform it, then use pivot tables and pivot charts to build a dynamic, interactive coffee sales dashboard. All the links to the resources are in the description below in case you'd like to recreate this project for yourself. If you end up putting your own twist on the visuals to create your customized dashboard, feel free to leave the link to it in the comment section. I'd love to check it out. So, without further ado, let's get started with this project. Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to go through the final dashboard that we're going to create. So this dashboard is going to be the coffee sales dashboard. And you can see that we're going to have one line chart with the total sales over time split by the coffee type. So we have 4 different coffee types: Arabica, Excelsa, Liberica, and Robusta. And then we also have the sales by country bar chart. So we're selling to 3 countries: US, Ireland, and the UK. And then we have a top 5 customers bar chart as well. Now we have a timeline that we can use to manipulate these visuals. So you can see here that if I just scroll along the timeline and I select different periods, all of my visuals will change. So let me do this again, and I can clear my filter, and then you can see that I see all of the data right now. We also have a roast type name slicer, so I can choose dark, light, or medium roasts, and the visuals will change. Let me just clear the filter again. And then we have 2 other slicers. We have one for size. So these coffees come in different sizes. These coffee beans come in a 0.2 kilo package, 0.5 kilo package, 1 kilo package, and 2.5 kilo package. And then let me just clear this filter. And then we have another slicer that just shows whether or not the customers have a loyalty card. So I can click on no, or I can click on yes to get to the customers that I want to filter. So let me just clear this filter again. And now let me just jump into our exercise file. So it's right here. There we go. And you can see here that I have my orders tab. So let me just click on home twice, and then you can expand this tab at the top. So let me just do that again. So you see here, as I come to home, I can click twice, and then it disappears, and then I can click again twice, and my tab actually comes back. So let's just go through the data that we'll be working with. So again, this is a data set on coffee bean sales. So we have the order ID column, order date, customer ID, product ID, and quantity already populated. Now we have a couple columns, column F to M, where the data is not actually populated. So there are going to be times when the data sits in different tables and you'll have to do some lookups to be able to get your data. So this is exactly what we'll be doing. We're going to be gathering our data first. So we have 2 other tables. If you see here, we have the customers and the products table. So the customers table, of course, will contain all of the customer information. So the unique key, or the primary key here, is the customer ID. So if I look at row 2, I can see that this customer ID belongs to Aloysia owner. And then they have email addresses, phone numbers, address lines, where they live, so the city they live in, the country they live in, their postcode, and then whether or not they have a loyalty card. So moving on to the next tab, which is going to be the products table. Let me just make it a bit bigger. And you can see here that we have a product ID, which is the primary key. And then we have the coffee type, the roast type, the size, the unit price, the price per 100 grams, and then the profit associated with it. So we'll be looking up these values first, and then back to our orders table, and let's get to data gathering. So we'll gather the customer data using the XLOOKUP formula, which is a new formula, and then we'll be using the traditional index match to gather the product data. Index match in this case will be really good because it will be dynamic, so I'll write only one formula for the products that I want to be looking up, and I'll be able to populate all of the columns. Whereas for the XLOOKUP, I'll actually have to repeat my formula 3 times. So once here for customer name, once for email, and once for country. So let me just get to this formula quickly. So if you click into cell F2 and start typing XLOOKUP, you see the formula actually comes up. You see it here, and then you can hit tab to auto-populate the formula. And then all you're doing is selecting the lookup value. So you see here that Excel actually gives you a prompt, so you know exactly what to do. So our lookup value will be, of course, the customer ID. So C2 and then comma. And then you can go on to the customers table on the customers worksheet to actually select your lookup array. So the lookup array is going to be this customer ID column here. And I click into cell A1 and then I press Control Shift, hold it down, and then the down arrow, and I select everything. And then I press F4, and you see here, as I press F4, I have these dollar signs, which basically just means that I locked in my range. And then I hit comma again, and the next thing I'll have to capture is the return array. So I can press Control Home to go to the first cell, and then what I want to return this time is going to be the customer name. So if I click into cell B2 and then Control Shift down, and then I press F4 again. And then if not found, I'll leave it empty. And the match mode, I would like it to be exact match. So I will select 0, close the brackets, and hit enter. And you see here that I have the customer Aloysia Ulner, who is the customer that belongs to this customer ID right here. Now, what you can do is if I go into cell F2 and you go to the right bottom here, you see this little plus sign. If you double click now, you can see that you have all of the customer names auto-populated straight away. So now let's move on to the email column, click into cell G2, and we'll do the exact same. So is equal to XLOOKUP, and then my lookup value again is going to be the customer ID. And then the lookup array, again, you can press Control and page down to move on to the next worksheet. So this is what I will do, Control Home to go to the first cell, and then Control Shift down to select the entire column here. And then now look here in my formula that as I press F4, you see the dollar signs appear, knowing that you locked in your range. I'll hit comma, I'll press Control Home again to go to the first cell. And then we need the email column this time. So I click into email and Control Shift down, and you see that I have some missing emails. So this won't actually select the entire column. So what you can do is press Control Shift and the end. And then as you press this, you can see that it selected all of the data till the end of this data set. So hold down Shift and then press the left arrow again. So you can just basically move left all the way until you select the column C only. And then if you look up here, I'm going to press F4 again to lock in my range. If not found, I'll leave it blank again. And then for the match mode, I'll select exact match. So 0, close the brackets, and hit enter. So now I'm just going to come here and double click right here to auto adjust the column width. And if you go into cell G2, go to the right bottom of the cell until you see the plus sign, double click, and then you can see that we have all of the values populated right here. Now you can see that we have a couple zeros here because the value was missing. So even though it found the customer ID, there was no corresponding value to it, as in the email address was blank. So it gave me a 0. Now what I can do about this is I can come in here and I can change my formula a little bit. So up here in the formula tab, I'm just going to click into it, and then you see I'm just going to start typing if. So I'm saying if XLOOKUP, whatever I'm looking up, is going to be equal to 0, then you can see that if the value is true, then give me nothing. Otherwise, I'm just going to copy and paste, give me the XLOOKUP value. So just give me the lookup value. Let me just copy with Control C. And then I'm going to paste with Control V, and then I'm going to close the bracket again, and then hit enter. So now you see that if I go to the bottom right of cell G2 and I double click, now you can see that all of my zeros disappeared right here. So let me just undo this. And then I just undid what I did before. You see the zeros right here. And let me just redo it. So I have these buttons here at the top. You can use Control Y to redo as well. So I'm going to press Control Y, and then you can see that my formula is working. You see my formula right here at the top. So I'm saying if XLOOKUP is equal to 0, give me nothing. Otherwise, just give me the lookup value. So this column is populated as well. Now next up, we'll do the country column. So let me just click into cell H2 is equal to XLOOKUP, and we'll do the exact same thing. So the lookup value is going to be the customer ID, and then you can move on to your customer's worksheet. The lookup array is going to be, again, customer ID column. So it's going to be column A, Control Shift down from cell A1, and then you press F4 to lock in the range. You can press Control Home again to return to the first cell. And then this time we're going to need the country, which is in column G right here. So you can click into G1, Control Shift down, and then press F4 again. And you can see that I locked in this range as well, comma, and then if not found, we'll just leave it as default. And then the match mode will be exact match. So I'm going to choose 0 and close the brackets. And you see here, now I have United States, and this is populated. So what I can do is come to the right bottom of cell H2, double click, and then you can see all of my countries are populated now. Okay, so that's all of the customer information populated within here. Let's move on to the product information that we need to look up from the products table right here. We could just continue using XLOOKUPs, but I thought I would show you index match because it will be dynamic. So I'm going to put one formula in cell I2, and then I'm going to drag this to the right and then drag it down, and then it'll populate all of the cells for the products. So let's click into cell I2 is equal to, and then you can start typing index, and then I'm just going to hit tab to auto-populate. And then you see here that we're going to have to select the array, and then the row number, and then the column number that we're referencing. So because we're using match twice, so we're going to use match to match the row number, and then using match to match the column number. It's going to be a dynamic formula, so one formula will populate everything. And don't worry if you don't really understand it now, I'm going to show you exactly how it's done. So for the array, let's go to the products worksheet, and then click into cell A1, Control Shift right, and then Control Shift down whilst you're holding Control Shift, obviously. And then this is going to be our array. Let's lock it in. So I'm going to press F4, and then you see that my dollar signs appeared at the top here. And then next up, you can see that now we move on to row number. So for the row number, I'm actually going to match my row number. So match, and then you can see that match requires a lookup value, lookup array, and then a match type. So let me just go back to orders, and what I'm matching is going to be the row level information. So this is going to be the primary key. So I'm going to match the product ID. So I click into product ID, and then this time I am going to fix in the column D. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So this is how many times I hit F4. And if you don't really understand this reference now, this is okay. I'll show you why it makes sense as I'm auto-populating the formula, so dragging it to the right and to the bottom. And then let me just select the lookup array. So back to the products table, the lookup array, you can press Control Home to go to the first cell. The lookup array is just going to be column A, so Control Shift down, and then I'm going to lock in the range using F4. And then the match type, I want an exact match, so 0. Okay, so now we have the row number dynamically. Let's move on to the column number again. Match my lookup value back into the orders table. My lookup value will actually be this coffee type column name, because this is what we'll be matching. We want the coffee type returned from the products dataset. So again, I'm going to press F4 once, and then I'm going to press F4 twice because I want to lock in the first row. As I move the formula to the right, I don't want the formula to go down a row and another row. And again, I will explain this once we actually auto-populate everything. So the lookup array this time back into the products table, press Control Home, and then you can just select the entire first row. Press F4 again to lock in this range, comma, and then we would like an exact match, so press 0, and then close the brackets, and then close the brackets for the index function, and press Enter. So now you can see that I have coffee type for product ID RM1. So my coffee type is ROB, which actually stands for Robusta. But now what happens is that if you see here, if I'm in cell I2 and I drag this formula to the right, you can see that all of my other columns auto-populated as well. So you can see that for roast type, I actually brought in the roast type. For the size, I actually brought in the size. And then for the unit price, I actually brought in the unit price right here. So let me just go back into my products dataset just to double check. And you can see that, yeah, so my coffee types, my roast types, my sizes, and my unit prices, I was able to successfully bring these in. So how did I actually do that? So if you go into the formula, you can press shortcut F2. And then the moment you press F2, you can actually see which cells you're referencing. So this time I'm referencing cell D2 in blue and cell I1 in red. And then if I move next to it and I click into cell J2, then I hit F2, and then you can see that this time I'm still referencing cell D2, but this time I'm referencing cell J1, which is the roast type, which is going to be my column number in the products dataset. And then when I click into cell K2, you can see again that I'm referencing the same product ID in cell D2, but I'm referencing the size column, as in I'm referencing cell K1. And this is exactly why we had to lock in our ranges the way we did. So let me just actually go to the formula bar right here at the top. And then you can see that as I'm in the formula bar, you can see that I went for $D2. This is because I locked in column D. So as I'm dragging my formula to the right, my column doesn't move on to column E, F, and then G. And then if you look at my $1 here, so basically here, the $sign is before the 1, meaning that I locked in the first row. So as I'm dragging down this formula now, so you can see here that I'm selecting these cells, and then I go here until I see my little plus sign, and then I double click. So you can see here as I'm dragging down this formula, let me just click into cell I6, for example, press F2, and then you can see that I'm still referencing coffee type in cell I1, or I could go to cell J8, for example, press F2, and then you can see that I'm still referencing the first row, which is my column header. All right, so now I have all of my customer information here, and I have all of my product, as in coffee bean information right here. I still have a sales column that we're going to populate with a very simple formula. So sales is just going to be the unit price times the quantity sold. So I come here and I say is equal to unit price times, and then I go to my quantity, and then that's it. I press enter, and then again, you can come here, go to the little plus sign, double click, and then you have your entire column populated right here. Now, one thing I don't really like here at the moment actually is I only have in column I only have the abbreviation for the coffee type, and I would like it to be the full coffee type name. So let me just create a new column right here, call it coffee type name. And here we'll be using an if function to basically just give them their actual long name. So ROB here will turn into Robusta, EXC will turn into Excelsa, ARA will be Arabica, and then LIB will be Liberica. So let me go into cell N2 right here. And then what you can do now is just go is equal to if, and then I say if my cell I2 is equal to ROB, then give me Robusta. And then otherwise, again, another if function. So if cell I2 is equal to, what's the next one? EXC, then give me Excelsa. Another if function, if my cell I2 is equal to ARA, then give me Arabica. And then another if function, if my cell I2 is equal to, what's the last one? Liberica, so LIB, then just give me Liberica. And then just the value, if it's false, I'm just going to leave it empty. We're not going to have any of these values because we have all values populated. Close the bracket again, and again, and again, and then hit enter. So now what you can do is you can again press the plus sign twice, and then the column will be auto-populated. And I think this is just a bit nicer because it's easier to understand when you have the full name for the coffee type. So again, for the roast type column, instead of M, L, and D, I would like it to say medium, light, and dark. So let me just do that next. So I click into column O, and then I'm in cell O1. Let me call this header roast type name. Let me just auto adjust the column width, and I can actually probably scroll this way a little bit, is equal to if I go into my cell J1. So if, or J2, if cell J2 is equal to M, then just give me the whole name of the roast type, so medium. Another if function, if cell J2 is equal to L, then give me light. And then another if function, if cell J2 is equal to D, then just give me dark. Otherwise, give me nothing. We won't have any of these because, again, all of our data is populated. Close the brackets, hit enter, and then you can come to the bottom right of cell O2, double click, and then you have all of the roast type names populated for you. Okay, so next up, let's quickly do some formatting, and let me just scroll back here, and let me go to the order date column in column B. So one thing I really like to do when it comes to date formats is I like to show my dates with the months as an abbreviation in letters, because obviously we have European date formats, we have American date formats, and they are different. So the European date format goes day, month, and then year. The American goes month, day, and then the year. So it might be quite confusing sometimes. So let me just click into cell B2, and then I'm right here, and then Control Shift down, and then you can press Control 1, which is going to be your shortcut to bring up format cells, or alternatively, you could just come here in your home tab, go to font, and then you could go to number right here. So what we'll do next is from here, I'll select custom, and then I'm just going to type in my own custom date format. So I want days, and then I would like the month to be an abbreviation in letters, so MMM. So you can see here that my sample's changing, so 05 hyphen September at the moment, and then I would like it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, so 4 digits for the year, and that's it. So let me just click OK now, and then you can see that now it's very straightforward. If I look at my date column, that it's day, and then it's the month, and then it's the year. Next up will be formatting our size column. So currently you can see that these are the sizes for the coffee bean packages that we're selling. But the only thing I don't like about it is that I don't actually see the metric here. So I know that 1 actually stands for 1 kilo, 0.5 for 0.5 kilos, so on and so forth. So let me click into cell K2, Control Shift down, and then press Control 1 to go to format cells. I'll go into custom, and then I'll type in my custom formula. So I would like to keep the 1 decimal. And you can see here I typed in 0.0, so you can see the sample as well. At the top, if I just go 0, I'll have 1 with no decimal, but if I type 0.0, I have the decimal. And then in quotation marks, kilo, and then that's it. If I just hit OK now, you can see that I have everything populated for me. So you can see that all of my values are actually in kilos, which is good. It's just easier for the audience to understand. Next up, let me format my unit price and sales columns in US dollars. So I click into cell L2 and then press down Shift once to the right, and then Control Shift and down. And then I can just go to the Home tab, and then under number here, the only thing I'll have to be doing is go into currency and select US dollars. And you can see that my unit price and sales columns are in US dollars. So I think this is everything that has to do with formatting. Maybe one other check I could do is check for duplicate values just in case. So let me click into cell A1, Control Shift right, and then down. And then I can come to my data tab. And then within the data tab, I have remove duplicates right here. So let me just hit that, hit OK. And then you can see that no duplicate values were found, which is good. Hit OK, and that's it. So we're comfortable that our data has no duplication. Now, another thing I like to do before moving on to my pivot tables and pivot charts for analysis and visualization is actually just to convert this range into an actual table. So you can do it by pressing Control T, the shortcut Control T. So click anywhere within your dataset, Control T, and then it'll just select everything for you. Hit OK. And now you can see here that we have this table design tab here. So let me hit Control Z to undo. And then you go to the top and you don't see table design. But the moment I hit Control T, hit OK, you can see that we have a table design. So let me give my table a meaningful name right here. I'm going to call this the orders table, which makes a lot of sense. And then let me just change it to something else in the table style, something maybe a little bit lighter to look at. Yeah, maybe this one. So the good thing about tables is that whenever you add extra columns or you remove columns or you put in a formula, it'll be so much easier for the pivot tables to update, as you can refresh them automatically. And I will show you exactly why this is good as we're going on in the project. But for now, we can actually move on to our pivot tables and our pivot charts. So first of all, let's just insert a pivot table. And you can do this by going into the Insert tab. And then within here, you could go to Pivot Table, and then from table, range, and then you see it just selects your orders table right here, and then you can hit OK. Now, another way you could insert a pivot table really quick is just by knowing the shortcut. So let me go back to the orders table, and then you could just press Alt, and then N, and then V, and then T, and then hit Enter, and then you have a new pivot table. So obviously, this is so much quicker. Let me just do it again. So Alt and V, T, press Enter, and it took me maybe a second or two, but you can use both ways, whichever one you prefer. So let me just delete my extra pivot tables at the bottom here. Let me delete those sheets. And then I have this sheet 1 pivot table right here, and we're going to create the total sales here. So let me just call this total sales. Let me call the worksheet total sales. Click into the pivot table, go to pivot table, analyze, and then top left, let me just give it a meaningful name. I'm going to call this total sales. So now that we have our pivot table, we can start working on our first visual. And let me just remind ourselves what that is. So we'll be creating this total sales over time line chart right here. So let me go back into the project file, click into the pivot table, and then the first thing we'll have to do is select the order date. So let me just drag in the order date into the rows. And you can see at the moment that I have them as years only. So I want them to be in years and months. So the quickest way I know to do this is to right click, go to group, and then within here, select years and months only. You can hold down Control, and then you can select years and months only, hit OK, and there you go. You can see that everything is in months now, which is good, which is what we want. So the next thing I like doing is go to Pivot Table Analyze, or rather Design, and then in the report layout at the top left, show in tabular form. I don't want any grand totals. I don't want any subtotals. And that's it. This is my preferred layout. So let me go back into my pivot table fields. And within here, I'm going to grab the coffee type name and drag it onto columns. So you can see here that I have the 4 coffee type names right here. And the next thing I'll do, I'll grab sales, drag it onto values. And then now you can see that we have this pivot table populated nicely. So let me go to sales and let me just format this. Actually, go to value field settings, and within here, go to number format. And then I don't want any decibels. So just go on to number, use the 1000 separators, and then no decimal places. And then go to OK, hit OK again. And there you go. It's much neater and cleaner now. And now we have everything, and we can go ahead to insert our pivot chart. So just go into Insert and then pick the line chart from here. 2D line, make it a little bit bigger. What I like to do is hide my field buttons, all field buttons, everything on the chart. Yep. And you can see that I have this chart right here. So if I go back to my total sales over time right here, it looks, I think, much better. So let's go back and format this chart right here. So first of all, what I'm going to do is double click on the chart. And then for the fill, I'm actually going to select solid fill. And then I would like it to be some kind of purple. So let me go 60, 20, 100 for the RGB. Let me make it much lighter, maybe like this color. Yep, I think that looks good. And then now let me go to home. And then for font colors, I'll just go more colors. And I like this purple of 60, 20, 100 RGB. So I'll make all the fonts this kind of purple. And then next up, what else can I change about this? So I can click into the axis right here. So instead of this gray line, I would like it to be maybe this kind of white line, maybe, so it's easier to see. Let me make that a little bit bigger. Yep, I think that looks okay now. And let me go to design, to the top left to add chart element. And then for the axis titles, I'll go primary vertical USD. And then as I type it in, you can see that now I have the USD right here. So next up, let me also add a chart title. So let me go back into design and then add chart element. So I go onto chart title, above chart, and I'm going to call this total sales over time. And then now I have my chart title as well. Okay, so now the next thing I would like to do really is just make these line colors a little bit different than the default. So let me click on Liberica solid line and I'll give it maybe a yellow color. And then let me click onto Excelsa. And then maybe I'll just change the shading of this to something darker, maybe like a brown. Let me click onto Arabica. I'll make this some kind of bright blue. And then let me click onto my, which one's missing? Robusta, maybe? Yeah, and let me make the Robusta red, for example. So you can see the different coffee types. There we go. I think this looks much better now. So the next thing we'll do, and let me just go back to the final file, is we're gonna insert this timeline right here so that we can use it to manipulate all of our charts. So back into the file, all you have to do once you have this pivot chart is that you have to go to pivot chart, analyze, and then at the top here, you go insert timeline. And because we have a date field, Excel will know. So select order date, hit OK, and then there you go. You have this nice order date timeline right here. Now I know that this looks very much different from the one that I have, but you can see that it definitely works. As I'm selecting different periods, you can see that my line chart is changing underneath. So let me just clear the filter. And now let's just make it look a little bit nicer. So you can see here at the top that you have timeline styles, and we're going to give it a custom style. So new timeline style, I'll call this purple timeline style. And then let's just see whole timeline. Let's format that. So I like Calibri body, for example, regular. I'll give it size 10 maybe, or size 11. Yeah, I'll go with size 11. And then for the border, I would like it to be this dark purple, inside, outside. And then for the fill, I would like it again to be this dark purple. So go to more colors, custom, and then 60, 20, 100 is the color I like. Hit OK again. And then now you can see a preview of it right here. So you can see the purple timeline. Actually, let me go back to fonts, and then I want white colors. Hit OK. Let me go to my header, format, Calibri body. I'll make it bold, 11. And then for the border, I'll go with a white border. And then, yeah, I think that's good. Selection label, again, Calibri body. I'll go bold. I'll make it white. And then time level, again, Calibri body, bold. I'll make it white. Hit OK. Period labels, I'll Calibri body, regular. I'll make this white as well, and maybe I'll make it bold as well. Back to time level, let me just check. Yeah, it is bold. Period labels too. I'll make it Calibri body, bold, and white again. And before I move on to the selected time block and unselected, let me just hit OK. And then you can see here that I have this new timeline style right here. So let me just click on it. And you can see that it's in purple now. So actually probably one thing I do need to change at the moment as I'm looking at this timeline is the header here that's called order date. So back into the purple timeline style, right click, modify. Let me go to my header and then let me make that white. hit OK again, and you see that my header is white now. All right, so I think this is looking not bad. Maybe the only thing I need to adjust now, go back to modify, is the selected time block. So I want the selected time block to have a white border, and then the fill, let me just select more colors. I'll just go with some kind of brighter purple. So maybe this purple. Yeah, I think this looks okay. Hit OK again, and then unselected time block. I think I'll just leave it gray for now. So you see that now it looks pretty good. You can see the separation clearly between the time blocks that you're selecting and the time blocks that you're not selecting. Actually, one other thing I can do is maybe if you see here, I could make this gray a little bit lighter. So back to modify, unselected time block format. And for the fill, maybe I'll just go with this color instead. So this really light one, hit OK again. And I think this looks even nicer now. So there we go. Our timeline's definitely working. I'm going to clear the filter to select everything, and I think this looks pretty good. Next up, what we'll be doing is we're going to be creating 3 slicers. Right here, we have the roast type name, and then we have the size, and then we have the loyalty card. So we're going to insert 3 slicers now. Back into our project file, and all you have to do is just click on the pivot chart or the pivot table, doesn't matter, and then go to pivot chart analyze, and then insert slicer. So I need 3 slicers. One's going to be the size, one is going to be the roast type name, and then one is going to be loyalty card, which we actually haven't created yet. So let me just insert these 2 slicers for now, and then I'll show you how we can easily get the loyalty card into the data. So back into our orders tab, which is our data tab. And then let me just close this right here. Control home to go to the first row, and then control right to go to the end of my data set. And you see here that now this is a table. I know this because I actually have this table design tab at the top. So the reason we converted our range into a table is just so that we can easily refresh our pivot tables and they can easily bring in the updated data. So let me click into cell P1. Right here, and then I'm going to give this column the header of loyalty card. So you can see right here that I have this column right now, and then it is part of my orders table. So if I go to table design right here, I'm in column P, and I'm still within my table. So what I want to do now is I'll just do it really simply. I'm just going to look up whether or not that customer has a loyalty card or not. So XLOOKUP, hit tab to auto-populate. Our lookup value this time will be the customer ID right here. And then the next thing we need to look up is going to be the lookup array. So you can go to your customers table, control home to get into cell A1, control shift and down, and then hit F4, hit comma, and then our return array this time is if you go to cell I1, control shift down, hit F4 to lock in the range. If not found, just leave it as default. Match mode will be 0 for an exact match. And then you close the brackets and then hit enter. And now you see that all of my values auto-populated within this table without me having to go to cell P2 and then, press the cross sign twice. So now what we can do, and this is really useful, is we can go back into our total sales worksheet, and I can click either on the pivot chart or on the pivot table, and then go to pivot chart analyze, and then I can go refresh, and I could refresh all or refresh this table only, but in this case it doesn't matter because we only have one pivot table at the moment, so I'll hit refresh. And now what's happened is that, let me click into the pivot table, and then you can see here in the pivot table fields, I have loyalty card because my data source is the orders table, and it just brought in whatever column I added to it. So the way you can see your data source is by going to pivot table analyze, and then you could just click into change data source, and then you can see your entire data source, which is the orders table. Had we used the range before, let me just go back to the orders table, hit control home, control right to go to the end. If we had used the range before, our range would have stopped in column O, and it would not have automatically expanded to column P. So because we used a table, and this is the orders table, our pivot table just refreshed whatever that was updated in the orders table. So let me go back to the sales worksheet. And now let me just click anywhere on the pivot chart or table, go to pivot chart, analyze, insert slicer. And then now I can insert my loyalty card slicer. There we go. So we have 3 slicers going on here. They're still not looking great. So let me just make some adjustments. You can go to the slicer styles and then make your own custom style. So I'm going to call this purple slicer. And then the whole slicer, I would like it to be purple, the fill. So it's going to be, again, 60, 20, 100. I like this dark purple. For the font, I'll choose Calibri, body, regular, and then make it white. And let me click OK again. And you can see that if I click on this purple now, you can see that it changed. You can also go here, right click, and then set as the default slicer type. So if you add in new slicers, it's going to start out with this style straight away. Go to modify and let's make the header Calibri body bold and let's make it white. I don't want any fill or border. Hit OK. Selected item with data. I'm going to make this Calibri body. I'm going to make it bold because it's my selected item. And yep, that looks good. Selected item with no data. I'm also going to make it Calibri body bold and white. And then unselected item with data, I'm going to format this to be Calibri body. I'm going to make it just regular. And then I would like the strike through on this. And instead of white, I could make it maybe a different shade of this white and then hit OK. And actually just going back to the selected item with data, I forgot to add borders. So let me just add a white border to that. So white, and then let me add on the border. Selected item with no data, I'll do the same. White, let me add on a border. And then unselected item with data, again, white. And then the border is white now. Unselected item with no data, I'll make this white border. Again, font Calibri body, regular. Color would be this different shade of white, and I would like the strike through. Hit OK again. And now you can see that the slicer looks much nicer now, so I can click and you can see that the values are different in my chart. So we can apply this to the other 2 slicers. So just click on the slicer and then select the style that you're going for. So now let me just quickly check how my slicers look in the final dashboard. You can see that the rows type name actually has 3 columns and only 1 rows. So let me go back into my project file, right click and go to size and properties, and then go to position and layout. I'll make it 3 columns. So now you can see that I have 3 columns and 1 row. So I can just make this a little bit wider and then drag it this way. It doesn't really matter which size I adjust now because I will adjust everything at the end when I'm building the final dashboard. But let me just see the loyalty card, for example. So let me go back into my final file. Yeah, that's fine. And then if I look at size, I have 2 rows and 2 columns. So let me just click on size, right click. Oh, actually, I have the format slicer right here. So I'll make the number of columns 2. And then now you can see that my size has 2 columns. And let me just test out all of my slicers. Yep, loyalty card works. And then rows type name, dark, light, medium. That one works as well. So now you can see that we've created almost everything. We've created 3 slicers, 1 timeline, and the total sales over time. So we just need to move on to the sales by country and the top 5 customers bar charts. Back into the project file, let me just copy and paste this pivot table. And it's important that you use the same pivot table in this sense, that you have to copy and paste rather than going back into the orders file and starting a new pivot table, because you're going to have to connect your slicers so that they connect across pages and you can filter all of your visuals. So the easiest way to do this is to hold down Control. So you're holding Control and then you're going to the total sales worksheet and then you left click and then you just drag. And then you see this little plus worksheet sign and there you go. I just duplicated my worksheet. So next up, I'll be creating the country bar chart. So I'm just going to call this country bar chart worksheet. And then let me just delete all of these visuals because I will not need these. There we go. And for the pivot table, the fields I'm going to use are actually not these. So I won't need the coffee type either. The only thing I'll need here is country. There we go. So we have our pivot table right here. we can go to Insert and then a nice bar chart. The only thing we need to do now is just to rearrange the order in which the countries come in. So I would like the top sales country to come in at the top, and then obviously the bottom one would be the country with the least sales. So you can go onto country here and then more sort options. You could do, I think I have to do ascending here because it's a bar chart, and then it'll end up the way I want it to look. Yep, that's it. That looks good. So you can see that we have a nice bar chart going on here. Let me remove all the field buttons and then maybe give it a different title. So this is going to be the sales by country. And let me just format this chart again. Let me remove this total legend right here. So again, I would like my chart, you can double click on the chart. I would like my chart to have a nice purple color. I would like the axis to have the same color as before. So I think I chose this one. I would like my font to be, so let me just click on my chart again, go to home, and then the font to be this dark purple. And for the bars, I actually want them to be in different colors. So let me give it a general green first. So solid fill, and I'll just give it some kind of green, maybe this one. Yep. And then I can change these as I go on. I can give it a border as well. So I'm going to give it a solid line. I'm going to give it a solid white line, actually, and increase the width to, say, 3 points, maybe. Yeah, I think that looks fine. Or maybe a little bit less, actually. Let me make it right here. Let me make it 2. And then the US, I'm going to make it darker. So what you have to do is you click into your chart and you see all of your bars are selected. If I click on the US again, only one bar is selected. And then you go to fill and then more colors. I'm going to make this much darker. Hit OK. And there you go. I have my US bar chart. And then click on to Ireland. Again, click it twice. And then I'm going to make this maybe a little bit brighter. Yep, sure. I'll make it this color. And then the UK, I'm just going to make it maybe even brighter. Yeah, like this color. And now we have 3 different colors for the bar charts. Now, another thing I want to add here is if you go to Pivot Chart Analyze or Design, I want data labels and I want them on the outside end. Let me just click into my pivot table and go to Pivot Table Fields. And then in Sum of Sales, I would like my numbers to be in US dollars, formatted in US dollars. So let me go to Currency, and then let me just select the US dollar currency. So English, United States, hit OK again. And then now everything is in US dollars. There we go. I think that's our bar chart done, but let me just check the final file. And I know the colors are a bit different, but I mean, you can choose whatever color you prefer. So we can move on to the top 5 customers now. So back into our working file. Again, we're going to duplicate this sheet by holding down Control and then going to the country bar chart worksheet and then just dragging it until you see this little plus worksheet sign. And then you pop it in and you call this top 5 customers. And all you have to do here now really is just to change the country on the axis to customers. So I'm going to drag in customer name. And then you see that I have a bunch of customers now, which is clearly not good. So if you go into customer name and then you put on some value filters, top 5 right here. And then you want to sort by the sum of sales, which is correct. And then you hit OK. You can see that I only have the top 5 customers now. And then you go back into customer name, go to more sort options, and then go to ascending by sum of sales, hit OK, and then you can see that this is the top 5 customers bar chart that you wanted. Let me just change the title to top 5 customers. So we have our total sales, we have our country, sales by country, and then we have our top 5 customers. And then we have 3 slicers, 1, 2, 3, and then we have the timeline. So basically we have everything to create our dashboard. So now let me just create a new worksheet. I go to the bottom here and click on this plus sign, and then I'm going to call this dashboard. So within here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make column A, at least the width of it, I'm going to make it 1. And then if I go to row 1, I'm going to change the row height to 5. And now I'm going to go to Insert, and then I will select Shapes. And if you hold down Alt, your shape will automatically resize to align with the border of your cell. So hold down Alt. I'm going to drag this all the way to column Z right here. And I'm going to give it a purple fill. I'm going to give it a purple outline. I will make the font within here white. And let me just start typing. So I'm going to call this Coffee Sales Dashboard. Let me put this text in the middle and let me make it much bigger. Yeah, maybe like this. Okay, so next up, the only thing we have to do really is just get the visuals from the other pages and just chuck them on the dashboard. So let me select the order date. You can hold down Control, select the chart. Let me select the 3 slicers. I'm still holding down Control. And then you can press Control X to cut. And then you just click anywhere within your dashboard, hit Control B, and then you can paste in your visuals. So let me do the same on the country chart as well. Control X, and then click anywhere within your dashboard, and then Control V. And then let me go to my top 5 customers, bar chart, Control X, back into my dashboard, and then Control V. Let me grab my timeline, and again, holding Alt, let me just adjust it right here so that it just snaps to the border of the cell. I think snap was the word I should have said rather than automatically adjust. Yep, so I'm snapping it to the borders of the cell. And then I have a couple filters, or I have a couple slicers here as well. Let me make the 2 bar charts a little bit smaller for now, just so it's easier to work with for me. Okay, so that was me adjusting everything, and I think everything is in place now. So the next thing we need to do is we actually have to make our slicers and our timeline filter all of our visuals. So currently you see here that as I'm selecting different time periods on my timeline, I'm only filtering this total sales over time here and not the other 2 bar charts. Same thing goes for my rows type name slicer and the loyalty card slicer. You can see here that it only affects 1 visual at the moment. So this is really simple to do. Let's click on the timeline first, go to the timeline tab at the top here, and then go to Report Connections. You click onto this, tick the other 2 charts as well, hit OK, and then now you'll be able to see that as I'm filtering this and selecting different dates, you can see that my visuals, all of my visuals are changing. Let me clear this filter, and then let me do the same for the slicers. So click onto rows type name, and then go to the slicer tab, go to Report Connections, and then tick the other 2 charts. Do the same for size. So there we go, click the other 2. And then go to Loyalty Card, Report Connections, and then click the other 2 charts, or tick them, hit OK, and now let's just test them out. Yep, Loyalty Card definitely works. Size, yep, also works. And then the rows type name also works. So that's everything working on our dashboard now, and I think it looks really good. Let's just touch it up to make it look more of a dashboard. So what you can do is go to View and remove the grid lines. I think that helps a lot. And then maybe the next thing that I like doing is you can double click, obviously, here, anywhere on the tab at the top, and then all of those things just go away. But a pro tip would be to actually go to File and then Options, and then within here, go to Advanced. So once you're in Advanced, you can go to Display and then untick Show Formula Bar. You can untick Show Horizontal Scroll, Show Vertical Scroll Bar. You can untick Show Sheet Tabs. You can also untick Show Row and Column Headers, and then hit OK. And now you can see that basically the only thing you can do within this worksheet is just to play around with the timeline and the slicers. And then there you go. That's basically everything you can do. And I think it just looks really neat as a dashboard. Now, one thing to bear in mind is that if you take away the horizontal and the vertical scroll bars, Depending on the screen size, people won't be able to scroll even if they want to, so they can only scroll with the mouse this way, but I don't know if they can scroll horizontally. So what I like to do is actually I go back to File, Options, Advanced, and I give my audience the option to scroll. So let me just go back here, horizontal and vertical scroll bar. I just tick them, hit OK, and now they appear again. So in case, someone's screen is too small, they can actually horizontally scroll along. And that's about it. This is the final dashboard. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out some of my other videos right here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.